Hello, good morning. Uh, we are we are group number 8, and we are going to talk about TPR, total physical response, and the audio-lingual method. But I am going to start with what is total physical response. Okay, I will start. Total physical response is an approach to teach a second language based on listening linked to physical activities which are designed to reinforce comprehension. Uh, Total physical response is a common method uh, of teaching language or vocabulary concepts by using physical movements to react to verbal input. The process mimics the way that impacts learn the first language, and it reduces student habitation and stress. Okay, the next slide. Where is it from? The originator of TPR, James Asher. James Asher worked from the premise that adult second language learning could have similar developmental patterns to that of child language acquisition. If children learn much of their language from speech derived then in the form of commands to perform action, then adults will learn best in that way too. The purpose of the total physical response is to create a brain between speech and action to boost language and vocabulary. TPR is not only for the teacher thought, but what do I mean with that? Students who are trying to learn language on their own can benefit as well as association and involvement with new vocabulary and can help you remember it next time. But how does total physical response work? Okay, total physical response works by helping understand the meaning of new words quickly. The teacher can develop center activities or add total physical response into any classroom activity they already do. This method is very important because children can develop their mind doing this kind of action. As I said, total physical response create a brain between speech and action, and also they can develop the sum of the teacher is doing. The next slide. Total physical response asks students to respond physically to the language they hear. Language processing is this match with physical action, like many other methodology devices. As we can see, there are many activities that children can do. Total physical response activities. We can see a group singing. Another one is Simon said, storytelling, and another activities like role plays. But doing these activities, students can it can be helpful helpful for them. Some benefits of total physical response. It helps students remember new phrases or words. It can be used in both large and small classes. Another one is it gets a student excited about learning and involved in the lesson. With these activities, students they will feel so excited and they will feel like refreshed, and it is a good benefit for them because they will see the class, they will enjoy the class. And another benefit is it affects for an age, a group, and abilities. That's all for me, and my classmate will continue with this topic.
To continue with the presentation, I'm going to talk about the audio-lingual method. This is also known as the Army method because it began during the World War II. So, based on Skinner's behaviorism theory, it assumed that a human being can be trained using a system of reinforcement, which was correct behavior receives positive feedback and errors receive negative feedback. The emphasis was not on the understanding of words, but rather on the acquisition of structures and patterns in common everyday dialogue. These patterns were elicited, repeated, and tested until the student's response were automatic. Some characteristics of this method are: vocabulary is taught in context. Audiovisual aids are used. Focus is on pronunciation. Structural patterns are taught using repetitive drills. And some typical features of this method are target language in some mother tongue, teacher-centered, presentation of new structural patterns and vocabulary, and inductive learning of grammar rules using dialogues. Why should I, as a student teacher, use this method? As the GTM, students can learn by repetition. Students pay attention and carry a sequence of what they are doing. But despite of learning in class, teachers can make activities to be performed at home so they can practice writing and reading. It sounds really boring, the fact that students have to repeat only. So teachers might find a way to make it interesting and look for different and funny activities. The pros and cons of this method. As with any method, the audio-lingual method probably suffered more than anything because it was just that, a method. In the early days of the use of the ALM, structure, rules, and procedures were closely monitored and practiced, in part to standardize the teaching process as well as to evaluate its effectiveness. Some advantages that this method has are students practicing useful language from the very first class. Another one is better pronunciation and increased participation as a result of the drilling exercises. The use of visual cues, which was thought to help develop vocabulary. But everything that has advantages has disadvantages. So two of the main disadvantages of this method are too much attention placed upon the teacher, who was limited to presenting only the mechanical aspects of language and reduced his improvisation, and the reduction of vocabulary in favor of a structure. Here we have 3 fresh ways to use the audio-lingual method in your class, so you can use it. The first one is focus on practical pronunciation. All spoken languages are pronounced. Individual sounds can be isolated. In any language, there may be from 20 to hundreds of sounds. No matter how many sounds the language you teach employs, you will need to first have a basic understanding of what they are, how they are produced, and how they work together. I missed a point there, a period. The example of this one is, so you can easily find minimal pair exercises online instead of focusing on repeating single sounds changes in words out of context, your students will have much more fun working with complete sentences. So you can use tongue twisters. An example, the example says, it rains little, but as little as it rains enough. And as the tongue twister that we have on the image says, my mommy makes me muffins on Monday. So you can practice. The second example is do a structural drilling exercises. Using that word can make students tremble with fear or yawn with boredom. So though drilling is useful and valid, you might want to simply call the activity something like sentence practice or even extended pronunciation practice, which in the end, it actually is the same. So the example is transformation practice. This involves a slightly more complex substitution in which the change of one word requires modifications in other words. Subject-verb agreement may need to be reflected. So an example is, I as a teacher say, I eat breakfast every day. And I say he. So my students have to say the same sentence that I said, but using the pronoun he. So they will say, he eats breakfast every day. Then I'll repeat their sentence and I'll say, he eats breakfast every day. And I say, they. So they change the next sentence. And so on. And the last example is use dialogue practice. Everyday dialogues are probably the most familiar leftovers of the original audio-lingual method. Most modern language texts will include dialogue material and exercises. These often being the principal presentation text in a unit, especially in texts aimed at language use rather than language study for examination. So an example would be a standard everyday dialogue, a conversation we can have any day. These dialogues should be kept short and sweet. Each student have 3 to 5 sentences to produce, not too many. So an example between two persons would be, good morning, hello, how much are the tomatoes? 35 yen a kilo. Oh, that's cheap, I'll take 3 kilos. Good, that will be 105 yen. Here you are. And here's your change. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye. So that's a very simple and short conversation that any of us can have every day. So that's everything for us. So thanks for your attention, and we hope you learned the 2 topics we explained to you today. Thank you.